So
How's
from the
everybody
very,
doing?
very digital to the very tangible.
Yeah,
So, CEO of Southern Company,
Thank you.
large utility. Just for the audience, and correct me if I'm wrong, about half of your portfolio is natural gas, and the rest is roughly split between nuclear, renewables, and coal.
yes, in terms of our fuel mix, in terms of how we provide energy and power to our customers.
So we hear a lot right now about sort of all of the above, right? And it seems like you are in all of the above. Like, what do you see particularly with AI, there's not enough power in the places we need it. What do you imagine that mix will look like in 5 years?
I would think it would continue to be very similar to what it is today. I mean, I think there will be, as we look at this incredibly increasing demand because of economic growth, but also because of the needs of data centers and driven by artificial intelligence and all the technology that we wear and we use and apply to all of our everyday living, there's going to be an incredible increase in demand. And so you say, how do you meet it? And acknowledging that there will be power to meet this demand, but it's going to require using all the resources that we have available to us, which will be natural gas, which will be nuclear, which will be some renewables. So I think the mix will be very similar to what we have today as we move into the future.
You've talked, I think, pretty openly about not giving up on coal, which is a pretty controversial fuel source. But you also opened, I think, the first nuclear facility in the U.S. in 30 years.
No, yeah, we built the first nuclear plant in the U.S. In the last 30 years. Brought the first unit on in 2023, and then the second unit came online in the spring of last year.
And do those, you have some net zero goals, do those offset each other in some way? Or when you kind of think about continuing to operate some of those older ones and bring new facilities online?
Well, we've gone through this incredible transition. And we look at if you go back to 2007, we were probably burning about 70% coal. Now that number's down to something less than probably 17, 18%. We've seen our emissions have been reduced from 2007 to last year, almost 50%. And so we had a goal of reducing our CO2 emissions by 50% by 2030. So we've made incredible advancements because for coal retirements, but also because the increase of renewables and more sustainable sources. So we've seen this incredible progress, and we've set a goal to be at net zero by 2050. And we know there's going to be new technology is going to be required to get us there, but things like nuclear, things like other renewables, things like batteries, other technology will need to be made available, will become more prominent to make sure we supply customers with what they need and support the economy, but also to support the environment.
Have you noticed a change in how people are talking about ESG? I mean, this is, or Davos, where this was, the big theme for the last 4 or 5 years. I haven't heard a lot about it this week.
Well, I think that's the first time I've heard ESG since I've been at Davos
Right
this
here.
year. Yeah, you just said it. I mean, I think there's really been a clear shift, but I think companies have sustainability goals, and those goals have continued. I mean, we're still committed to net zero by 2050. But the conversation has changed, and I think companies have cultures, companies have goals and visions and aspirations, and those things aren't political. I mean, those things are the right things to do that kind of define us as companies, and so we'll stay true to those things that are very, very important to us.
There's this real euphoria, I think, in the business community about deregulation under Donald Trump, heavily regulated industry.
Yeah.
First of all, do you share that? And then what tangibly does that mean for your day-to-day? I assume you're primary regulator for EPA. How do you think about dealing with them?
There was, regulation can become a tad bit overwhelming sometimes. And we've seen this preponderance, this kind of pancaking of rules. And so to free up some of those rules and to allow ingenuity and innovation, allow us to proceed to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our economy, but also for customers, is going to bring value to the economy, but also will bring value to customers. And so it helps with speed. It supports innovation, all incredibly new ideas and different ways of doing business. So I think it's incredibly exciting, and I think it's going to free up capital that we can deploy that will provide for productive investments in the business that we operate in. So I think it's an incredibly bright future and incredibly exciting in terms of what's ahead.
Because there was a bit of a counter narrative that I think the business community, the things that it likes that it's hearing out of the new administration, it puts a lot of stock in, and the things that are perhaps a little troubling, they say, oh, he's bluffing, or he's going to get reined back in. I don't know. What do you make of, I think, a very warm embrace that the administration's gotten?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty exciting. I mean, to see the ingenuity and to see kind of capital be freed up and regulations be lessened, so we can go do the business that we do. But we're still going to maintain our commitment to all of our stakeholders. And so we'll balance our portfolio in terms of our fuel sources, but we'll make sure that we're meeting all the needs of all the people that support our business and care about our business. We're going to make sure we continue to do that in a very, very balanced way.
I want to talk about the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
Came online, but I think it was a couple years late, a little over budget.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard to build big things in America?
We had gotten away from, like I said, we hadn't built anything like that in over 30 years. I mean, so we didn't have the supply chain. We didn't have the workforce. We had a couple other events that occurred. We had Fukushima in Japan, and then the contractor went bankrupt. So we had a number of challenges that we had to get past. But one of the things I say inside of our company all the time is that, but we've demonstrated we can do hard things. And so we stayed the course. We persevered. We knew this would be value and beneficial to all of our stakeholders, to our economy, to our customers. And so we stayed the course, and we got it done. And so you see the benefits of that today, and you'll see the benefits of this investment for some 60 to 80 years down the road. So something was hard. It took us a little longer and cost a little more than we expected. But I think in the end, it's going to be something we're going to be incredibly very proud of.
You talked about that supply chain. Is that now a domestic supply chain? When we talk about national security and energy, do we need to have that here?
No, it's an international supply chain, and I think as you come to events like Davos, and you see kind of the globalization and the global economy, and all the people that are here in the companies and ministers and governments, you see kind of the global nature of our world. And so, yeah, the supply chain it's a global supply chain. All the equipment was not built in the U.S. I mean, some in Korea and Italy and different places, which I think is very beneficial to the global world. So we've got to continue to build out. We've got to build out a supply chain domestically, but I think we got to continue to partner with the rest of the world, particularly in this industry, to meet the needs that we have in the U.S., but also the energy needs that exist across the globe.
And is that imperative? Is that a business imperative? Is that a national security imperative? Is it logistics?
It's one of those things that sometimes we take for granted. But guess what? Every industry, every business has to have power, has to have energy, very simply put. And so energy security breeds economic security, but it also breeds national security. I mean, so there's a direct correlation, there's a direct connectivity in terms of the value proposition and the importance of energy to the economy all across this world. And we must make sure that it's available.
Your business, and I think a lot of the sectors that are sort of seen as benefiting perhaps the most from the change in administration in the U.S. are actually really capital intensive. AI is very capital intensive. Mm-hmm. You're making these long-term decisions.
Yes.
To these huge lead times, major capital projects. How do you get comfortable taking shareholders' money and saying, here's a 10-year plan when, we just saw how quickly the politics changed?
So that's the importance of regulation, and you talk about crosswinds, but having a regulatory environment where when you make these long-term investments that have 60 to 80-year lives, you want to have certainty of return and value and benefits to all your shareholders, but also to your customers. And so that's a lot of work with governmental officials, a lot of work with regulators to understand your business, understand your markets and conditions that you face, and to make sure we're finding that right balance of regulation that supports a thriving, growing business. And when we do that, that's beneficial to everybody. And so far so good. We're going to continue to stay engaged as we have in the past. And I think we'll continue to see a productive environment, a productive economy.
We've seen this recently, certainly. There were hurricanes fall. Now there's, back in the U.S., still some fires that have cost a lot of power on the West Coast. Obviously, climate change is a real thing in your business, where the politics of it aside. Sort of curious how you think about reliability, how you think about places that perhaps you just can't build, you can't invest, places that are just hard to deliver the service?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we talk a lot about reliability in terms of being able to keep the power on, keep the lights on, so it's there whenever you need it. But it's also important to have systems that are incredibly resilient. And so they can withstand hurricanes, they can withstand storms. And so you'll see more hardening, you see more infrastructure being put underground so they can also withstand fires. So there are a lot of lessons to be learned by these disasters that says, how do we build these systems back to make sure they can withstand these kinds of conditions? So, I mean, as you look at Los Angeles, I'm sure as they rebuild the Palisades and Altadena and all the areas that were impacted by the fires, you'll see new kinds of construction. You'll see new methods and new structures of how the infrastructure will be laid out so that it can withstand these kind of conditions before. I mean, you've seen homes that were quote unquote fireproofed that are still standing because they made those changes. You'll see similar changes also being made in infrastructure and grids of the future to make sure they can withstand these kind of conditions.
When you think about regulation, should those be mandates? Should those be government? Is this a place where government actually should intervene and say, you gotta make some changes to the code?
There are things we should voluntarily do. And I mean, once again, I think there's just great partnership and collaboration in terms of how we make these kind of decisions that we run this business, we know best. And let's offer up, let's go to the regulators and say, what's the best method of doing this? And let's do this in partnership and not be mandated because of somebody's political perspective, but what's the right best decision for the business, but also what's the right best decision for the businesses and for the customers.
Listen, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. We heard from some
Thanks for
really
listening.
interesting industries, and we'll have you back next year to see how
Thank you very much.
I'll shake
Thank
out.
you. Okay.